What happens when an unstoppable force of empirical data collides with the immovable object of primetime entertainment? What transpires when a politician armed not with talking points, but with cold, hard numbers, walks onto a stage built for laughter and light-hearted jabs? You get a moment of television so unexpectedly raw, so intensely real, that it short-circuits the entire system. This is the story of how Representative Katie Porter, a woman who turned congressional hearings into masterclasses of accountability, didn't just appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live. She effectively shut it down, leaving a stunned host, a silent audience, and a lingering question: has our discourse become so sanitized that we can no longer handle the unvarnished truth? Our story unfolds not in the hallowed marble halls of Washington, D.C., but thousands of miles away under the glittering, unforgiving lights of Hollywood, California. The protagonist is Katie Porter, a Democratic congresswoman from Orange County, a former law professor who has built a national reputation for her signature whiteboard takedowns. She wields a dry erase marker like a weapon, breaking down complex corporate malfeasance into simple, undeniable arithmetic that leaves powerful CEOs squirming in their seats. She is a figure of substance in a world that often prioritizes style, a pragmatist known for her relentless preparation and no-nonsense demeanor. Our second character is Jimmy Kimmel, the affable, celebrated king of late night. For over 2 decades, he has been a fixture in American living rooms, his show a carefully calibrated machine of monologue jokes, celebrity banter, and viral-ready sketches. The El Capitan Entertainment Center on Hollywood Boulevard is his kingdom, a place where the powerful come to appear more human, where political tension is often diffused with a self-deprecating joke or a shared chuckle. Kimmel is a master of his craft, an expert at navigating the delicate balance between entertainment and relevance, keeping the conversation light enough for a mass audience while still touching on the topics of the day. This wasn't a scheduled political debate. It was meant to be a routine guest appearance, a get-to-know-you segment with a rising political star. But on this particular evening, the well-oiled machinery of late-night television was about to grind to a spectacular halt. The worlds of policy and performance were set to clash, and only one would emerge unchanged. The air inside the El Capitan studio was thick with manufactured glee. It was a crisp Tuesday evening in early October, a time when the political chatter in America was reaching a fever pitch. Midterm elections were looming, and the dominant issue on everyone's mind was the economy. The price of everything from a gallon of gas in Los Angeles to a carton of milk in rural Wisconsin seemed to be spiraling out of control. The word inflation was on every news broadcast, a vague and menacing specter haunting American households. For the audience packed into the studio, Jimmy Kimmel Live was an escape from those anxieties, a nightly dose of levity in uncertain times. Jimmy Kimmel, dressed in his trademark sharp suit, was in his element. He'd just wrapped a successful monologue, landing several solid jokes about celebrity gossip and the absurdities of daily life. The crowd was warm, their laughter echoing on cue. The house band Cleto and the Cletones played a funky upbeat riff as he introduced his next guest. She's a congresswoman from California who's become famous for making corporate executives wish they'd paid more attention in math class, Kimmel announced with a grin. Please welcome the master of the whiteboard, Katie Porter. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Porter walked onto the stage with a calm, composed smile. She was dressed professionally, but not ostentatiously, her presence a stark contrast to the glitz of the set, the polished floors, the vibrant blue and purple lighting, the massive video screen displaying the Hollywood skyline. She shook Kimmel's hand and settled into the guest chair, the picture of a seasoned professional ready for a friendly chat. Kimmel began with the usual late-night softballs. He asked about her kids, her life as a single mom in Congress, and the unexpected viral fame of her whiteboard. Porter was engaging and articulate, sharing a few lighthearted anecdotes. The interview felt comfortable, predictable. The atmosphere was precisely what the show's producers aimed for: pleasant, interesting, and above all, safe. For the first 5 minutes, Kimmel was the gracious host, and Porter was the charming guest, playing their roles to perfection. But underneath Porter's amiable exterior, there was a palpable sense of focus. She hadn't come to Hollywood just to trade pleasantries. She had come with a message, and she was waiting for her moment. Kimmel, lulled into a sense of routine, was about to give her that moment, completely unaware that he was leading his own show to the edge of a cliff. The audience, comfortable in their seats, had no idea the escape they had sought was about to be replaced by a confrontation they couldn't turn away from. The shift was subtle at first, a slight change in the air sharpening in Katie Porter's eyes. After the initial pleasantries, Kimmel pivoted the conversation to the topic of the day. So let's talk about this inflation thing. He began leaning forward in his chair, adopting the tone of an everyman grappling with a complex issue. Everybody is feeling it. It costs like $80 to fill up your car now. My morning coffee costs more than my first car. Is this just the new reality? Is this something we all just have to get used to? He posed it as a casual, relatable question, a commiseration with his audience. It was a classic Kimmel move, simplifying a national crisis into a personal inconvenience. But for Porter, this framing wasn't just an oversimplification. It was a dangerous misdiagnosis. Her smile faded, replaced by the focused, analytical expression so familiar to those who had watched her congressional hearings. Well, Jimmy, I think it's important we call it what it really is. She began, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the studio's lighthearted ambiance. For many of the biggest corporations, this isn't just a byproduct of supply chain issues. We're seeing a phenomenon that economists are calling greedflation. It's when companies use the cover of inflation to raise their prices far beyond their own increased costs, and they're pocketing the difference as record profits. Kimmel nodded, still smiling, but a flicker of surprise crossed his face. This wasn't the typical political answer. It was direct, specific, and it carried an edge of accusation. He tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Greedflation, huh? That's a catchy name. But come on, he chuckled, playing the part of the gentle skeptic. Is it really that simple? You have businesses big and small, they have to survive. Their costs go up, so they have to raise prices. Isn't that just basic economics? That was the moment the conflict truly ignited. Porter didn't chuckle back. She didn't acknowledge the attempt at levity. Instead, she leaned forward, transforming the plush guest chair into a witness stand. It is basic economics, she agreed, her tone turning professorial. Let's take a company that makes, say, toilet paper. A real example. One of the biggest producers in the country saw their costs for pulp and shipping go up by about 20%. That's real. But they raised the price you pay at the store by 35%. The extra 15% didn't go to their workers, who got maybe a 3% wage increase. It didn't go to innovation. It went straight to stock buybacks and executive bonuses. So when a family is trying to stretch their budget, they're not just paying for higher shipping costs, they are directly funding a CEO's new vacation home. The audience, which had been chuckling along with Kimmel moments before, grew quiet. The specificity of the example, the clear, unassailable math, hung in the air. Kimmel's smile was now fixed, a mask of professional composure. He was losing control of the segment of the very narrative of his show. He tried to interrupt, to pivot. But these are massive companies. There are so many factors. Porter didn't let him finish. Let's talk about another factor, she said, her voice rising in intensity. Oil companies. In the last year, their profits weren't just high, they were the highest they've been in history. At the same time, they were telling us the high price at the pump was all due to international conflict. The data doesn't lie. They were making more than $1 in pure profit for every gallon of gas you put in your car. That isn't survival, Jimmy. That is profiteering from a crisis. The energy in the studio had been completely transformed. The fun celebrity chat was gone. This was now a forensic cross-examination, and the entire corporate American power structure was on trial. Porter wasn't just a guest anymore. She had seized the platform. Kimmel, for the first time in a long time on his own stage, looked genuinely rattled. He was a comedian and an entertainer, a man skilled in witty retorts and disarming humor. But he was utterly unprepared for a guest who came armed, not with jokes, but with an arsenal of meticulously researched facts and a refusal to be trivialized. The tension was no longer rising. It was boiling over. The atmosphere in the studio was electric, but not with the energy of comedy. It was the charged silence of a high-stakes courtroom, a silence broken only by the determined voice of Katie Porter. Jimmy Kimmel, the undisputed ruler of this domain, was visibly floundering. He had lost the thread of the interview, and more importantly, the command of his own stage. In a last-ditch effort to reclaim his territory and bring the conversation back from the brink of a corporate indictment, he deployed the ultimate talk show host defense, the appeal to personal connection and anecdotal evidence. "Look, Katie," he said, forcing a congenial tone that sounded hollow against the tension she had built. "I get what you're saying, I do, but I know people who run businesses. Good people. They aren't mustache-twirling villains from a cartoon sitting in a boardroom plotting how to gouge the little guy. They're my friends. They have employees to pay, families to support. It feels like you're painting everyone with the same broad, angry brush. It was a classic deflection and attempt to humanize the abstract and render Porter's data-driven argument as an impersonal, unfair attack. He leaned back, a look on his face that seemed to say, "See, it's more complicated than that." The camera zoomed in on Porter. The audience held its breath. This was the critical moment. She could either soften her stance, acknowledge his point, and allow the show to glide to a safe commercial break, or she could double down. She did not soften. Porter held his gaze for a long, unwavering second. The polite smile was a distant memory. Her expression was one of profound, steely seriousness. When she spoke, her voice was not loud, but it possessed a weight that commanded absolute attention, silencing every rustle and cough in the auditorium. "Jimmy," she said, her tone cutting and precise, devoid of malice but stripped of all pleasantry. "With all due respect, this was never about your friends." The directness of the statement landed like a physical blow. Kimmel's posture tightened. "This is not about the individual intentions of any one person, good or bad." Porter continued, her cadence deliberate and powerful. "This is about a systemic pattern. It's about a set of rules that we in government have allowed to be written that incentivizes this behavior. While you and I are on television talking about the rising cost of a latte, in Hollywood, a family in my district, a family I was talking to last week, is sitting at their kitchen table deciding whether to pay for their child's asthma medication or to buy enough groceries to last the week. That is a real choice happening in this country tonight, for millions." She paused, letting the weight of that reality settle into the glamorous Hollywood studio. The contrast was jarring and intentional. The data I am presenting shows unequivocally that this isn't a story of survival for these specific multi-billion-dollar corporations. It's a story of unprecedented record-shattering profits. So the question we should be asking isn't whether your friends are villains. The real question is why the system we currently have in place allows their record profits to be subsidized by the quiet desperation of millions of American families who are just trying to survive. Silence. A profound, echoing silence. It wasn't the silence of an audience waiting for a punchline. It was the silence of an audience that had just witnessed a complete dismantling. Porter had not just answered his question, she had exposed its inadequacy. She had rejected his entire frame of reference and replaced it with a starker, more urgent one. She had, in that moment, done to Jimmy Kimmel what she had done to countless CEOs. She had used his own words to corner him, his own platform, to deliver a message far more powerful than the medium was designed to handle. Kimmel stared at her, his mouth slightly agape. All the glibness, all the easy charm had evaporated. He looked like a man who had been suddenly woken from a dream. The teleprompter was useless. His producers were screaming in his earpiece, but he seemed not to hear them. The segment was scheduled to go on for another 3 minutes. It was an eternity he could not fill. He swallowed, blinked, and turned to the camera with a deer-in-the-headlights expression. We have to, we'll be right back," he stammered. The applause sign flickered weakly, but the audience's response was hesitant, scattered. The band, after a moment of stunned hesitation, kicked into the commercial break music with a jarring burst of energy that only highlighted the vacuum that had preceded it. The screen cut to a brightly colored commercial for a fast food hamburger. But no one was thinking about hamburgers. They were thinking about the takedown they had just witnessed. The show hadn't just gone to a commercial break. In a very real sense, it had been shut down. The jarring cheerfulness of the fast food commercial on screen was a world away from the chilling tension on the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live. As the network broadcast ads for pickup trucks and insurance, the studio itself was a hive of quiet panic. Crew members avoided eye contact with each other. A floor director spoke into his headset in hushed, urgent tones. The audience murmured amongst themselves, replaying the stunning exchange they had just witnessed. It felt less like a commercial break and more like the aftermath of a controlled detonation. In the center of it all sat the two protagonists. Jimmy Kimmel had gotten up from his desk, running a hand through his hair and pacing behind it, his face pale under the stage lights. He exchanged tense words with a producer who had rushed onto the set. His affable public persona had vanished, replaced by the raw stress of a performer whose show had been derailed live on air. He had been publicly outmaneuvered, his command exposed as fragile. The king had been momentarily dethroned in his own court. Katie Porter, by contrast, remained seated in the guest chair. She took a calm sip of water, her demeanor unchanged. There was no triumphalism in her expression, no hint of a gotcha smile. She simply looked like a professor whose lecture had concluded. She had presented her evidence, made her case, and now she waited. Her mission was complete. She had not come to Hollywood to make a friend or to be entertaining. She had come to use a national platform to deliver a difficult truth, and she had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. When the show returned from the break, the change was palpable. Kimmel was back behind his desk, but his energy was gone. He looked exhausted. He offered a perfunctory thank you to Porter, his voice lacking its earlier warmth. "Congresswoman Katie Porter, everyone," he said, gesturing to her as the band played her out. The applause from the audience was more robust this time, a wave of respect for the woman who had refused to play the game. As Porter walked off stage, she hadn't just ended a segment. She had shattered the unwritten rules of late-night television. The rest of the show limped to its conclusion. Kimmel's next guest, a famous actor with a new movie to promote, was met with a subdued host who seemed to be going through the motions. The usual playful banter felt forced and hollow. The electrifying moment with Porter had sucked all the oxygen out of the room, and the show never recovered its festive atmosphere. The true fallout, however, began the next morning. By 9 a.m. Pacific time, the clip was everywhere. It was the #1 trending topic on Twitter. News outlets from CNN to Fox News were running segments analyzing the takedown. Commentators on the left lauded Porter as a hero, a truth-teller who had brilliantly exposed the hollow nature of mainstream media discourse. Commentators on the right ironically also praised her for refusing to bow to a Hollywood elite, even as they disagreed with her economic argument. The impact was a powerful lesson in communication. Porter demonstrated that substance does not have to be sacrificed for style. She proved that a message grounded in undeniable facts delivered with conviction and clarity can be more compelling than any rehearsed joke or celebrity anecdote. The whiteboard was her signature tool, but her greatest weapon was her ability to reframe a debate, to cut through the noise, and expose the core of an issue in human terms. The lesson wasn't just about greedflation. It was about the power of speaking truth to power, regardless of the stage. She showed that you don't need a congressional committee room to hold people accountable. Sometimes a talk show host's chair will do just fine. The event left a permanent mark, a reminder that in an age of distraction, a moment of unvarnished reality can be the most shocking spectacle of all. Now, the story of that night on the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live is more than just a viral moment. It's a case study in courage, preparation, and the power of a single, unwavering voice. It forces us to ask ourselves some important questions. In a world saturated with carefully managed public relations and sanitized sound bites, how hungry are we for the unfiltered truth? What did you think of Katie Porter's approach? Was she an overly aggressive guest who broke the social contract of a late-night show? Or was she a public servant seizing a rare opportunity to speak directly to the American people about what truly matters? Was Kimmel simply out of his depth? Or does the incident reveal a deeper problem with how our media insulates us from uncomfortable realities? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the nature of our public discourse, then please give this video a like and share it with someone who appreciates a story with substance. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the pivotal moments that define our world. The ultimate lesson from that fiery evening in Hollywood is both simple and profound. Your stage does not define the power of your message. The power of your message can redefine any stage you stand on. Whether you are in a boardroom, a classroom, a congressional hearing, or on a television set watched by millions, it is conviction, armed with indisputable facts, that remains the most potent instrument for change. Be prepared, speak your truth, and you can make the world listen.